in the world of the divine, the only reality is unconditional love, unconditioned. Says the only you're allowed to have. But in this world, we're conditioned into believing we're all kinds of things, like the victim, or the one who's, the smart, pretty one, or we have conditions on ourselves that make us happy or unhappy. In the world of reality, or capital R, truth and reality, or the heaven of it, there's no condition to this that's not lovable, which is very hard for humans to believe. So when there's something that comes along and you can't love it, then you're going to get stuck in the illusion of it, or the dream of it. And that often makes people feel guilty. So there's two things that separate us and that are very, very useful to egos, that separate us from our divine nature. And it's two sides of the same coin: judgment and guilt.
Hi, everybody. Thank you for joining us today. I am here with Maureen Whitehouse, and I am really, really excited about having this conversation with Maureen. She is an author, a transformational speaker, a spiritual educator, and an expert in personal development and enlightenment. So welcome, Maureen.
Hello. So happy to be here. Thank you, Lisa.
Well, I'm really excited to have you here because you've had such an interesting story, and you've been doing the work that you do for quite some time. In fact, your awakening experience, and when I started really getting opened up, it's both around the same time, around 1996.
Yeah.
And that's when I started my spiritual journey in what's happening here. and having new teachers come into my life and helping me to develop my gifts. And you had quite an experience as well. So
I did.
would you mind talking a little bit about the experience that you had that was
Yeah. Yeah, kind of to frame things so that it puts this whole world of the miraculous into perspective and makes it more attainable for people. So I, at the time in 1996, I had small children and I was a commercial actor. And so I got to the place where I was at kind of the pinnacle of things. I was working a lot and I could make my home like a commercial set. Everything was perfect. My life on the outside looked so picture perfect. And I really prided myself on having that as the image for things. And yet inside I started to feel emptier and emptier. I felt like there has to be more than this. And so I was on auditions one time, and I used to frequent this New Age bookstore outside of Boston, and it was just near where I was doing the audition. And I went in after the audition, and I was really looking at the self-help section, and I had done that for years, and all the power positive thinking and everything. And at the time, the self-help section was not that big, and a couple of shelves worth. And I looked at it and said, done that. And I was feeling like it's kind of hopeless, like this positive, putting things into a positive perspective wasn't enough for me. I knew there had to be more than that. And so I turned and I looked, and underneath the front window of the bookstore was a book that was kind of like shining at me. And it kind of like took me back, and I went over to it and picked it up, and it fell open. It was A Course in Miracles. It fell open to the page, "I am not a body, I am free, for I am still as God created me." And it hit me so deeply right in the heart that I just stood there, started crying, and I didn't know why. In retrospect from that, I was a body. I was a clothes hanger, for the things I was doing, and Spite and Smile for the commercials, and everything was framed around my life as a body. And so I took the book home, and since it was so important to me and it impacted me so much, I started the lessons, but I hid it under my couch so no one would know. So I did it by myself and didn't know anyone in the world. My world that I occupy was so different than this spiritual world that I was entering, that I was like a little embarrassed, and at the same time I was also intimidated because I didn't understand the lessons. And in the beginning, the first lessons are, this table's not a table, this chair's not a chair. It's telling you to look around and see the things and the labels that we have on things in life. And I didn't understand it. It scared me. I kind of went right to the back of the book to make sure it wasn't a cult that was mind training or anything. I was at that point where I didn't know yet how to discern if it was true spirituality or if it was something that was, taking me astray. And it was true spirituality. So for the next 2.5 years, I went through the 365 lessons of A Course in Miracles. And I took me 2.5 years because I really, really said, I'm going to do this. So if it said, for instance, today you are the light of the world, and I felt like I got to the end of the day and I was not the light of the world today. I was giving people the finger in traffic, and I remember saying, I am not Mother Teresa. you know, I and I got to the end of the lessons, and I was sad because I didn't get it. I had used the path of the Course in Miracles, and the main path is forgiveness. So I had gotten to every person in my life and everything in my life that I thought I had to forgive. And when I got to the end, I realized, after finishing the lessons, I went back to start to make my way through the text, and I found that I had one person who was the common denominator in all my pain. It had been me. So I realized, Maureen, I forgive you. I got on my knees actually in my living room, and I forgave myself for all of the perception that had caused me so much pain, that was me perceiving me as separate from the world. I didn't know it at the time, but it was very interesting because I was hearing in A Course in Miracles, it's a course really on mysticism, teaching you how to see there's a world here that most of us miss, that's behind the scenes, that's the fulfilling, that's the heavenly world, that's the complete and perfect world where we're all taken care of in this divine perfect way. And so I heard, just before that, I said, Course in Miracles is channeled work by a woman who was a professor at Columbia University School of Psychology. They were the heads of the psychology department. And so it's very heady and has a lot of things that your mind can be engaged in while your spirit is using your mind to beat your mind. And so I started to ask, if this is real, then if this is actually real, I don't understand it, you better teach me. And so I started to feel, I call it hear, feel. I'm sure you know this, Lisa, like when you're really feeling the divine, it's not an intellectual knowing, it's a deep seated, more of your heart
No, I
space.
am. Yeah.
Yeah. And so I heard, you've come to the point of chasm between my world and your own. Now you're ready to experience the great resolve. So I didn't know what that was, but it sounded, I trust the voice. I knew it. I had been listening to it and following it and becoming more and more peaceful all these days over these years. And that night, my husband was out of town. I went to bed, and my kids were next to me. The dog was at the window. The alarm was on. I was still a scared person, and I started to feel some cramps in my stomach. And I said, "Well, I believe in miracles. Now heal this." And I went shooting out of my body into a place that it's not. It felt like being wrapped in the soft down comforter of love. It was, my mind was gone. It was at oneness with the absolute. And the first thought I had, it's a place where there's no capacity to think because you're at one, and it's only and only all of it is unconditional love. I began to come down through layers with my first thought, there's no judgment here. So, I had grown up Catholic, and in our experience of God, there was this big judgment and judgment day. And when I said there's no judgment, I began to experience a life revision. And the entire life revision was all of the pain in my life, all of the painful moments of my life. And in that life revision, I heard, felt a thunderous, rolling chuckle that was saying, now you see how I see. Now you see how I see. And yeah, it still makes me feel because it was so loving and so benevolent. And I could see the divine's perspective of all of the pain that I had seen myself not as divine. That was the common theme of everything. And it was big pain, things that had been physical, everything in my life. And I had seen how the divine views us as perfection through all of it. And yet we are the ones that see ourselves as small and separate. So I came out of that experience and I felt like I was on fire. Literally, I was felt like I was on fire. So I look and see my kids asleep still. I looked at the clock because I was a scared person. So when I felt the cramps, I remember looking at the clock. It was 3 o'clock in the morning. And this was 7:30 in the morning about, and I had been breathless that whole time. I didn't know that exists until later on going to India and studying the traditions of the Hindu traditions and seeing that that's a thing that saints go off into breathlessness. And so I went to the bathroom mirror to wash my face, to splash water on my face so that I could, come to put it together. And when I looked up into the mirror, I saw myself as spirit. I saw this beautiful, and I had been a model for years, a commercial actor for years, and I looked at this being, and every beautiful person I had ever worked with was like this beauty compared to this being, and looking back at me with such golden, loving eyes that I was almost fell on my knees because it was so much love. And as the minute I saw that, I said, that's all of us. That's what we forgot. That's what we forgot. The next 3 days, I walked through life with no mind, no capability to think, only to appreciate. And it's still like everything was such perfect orchestration. I remember seeing I had to go to Kmart, things like normal things to do things in my everyday life, pick up the kids at school, and I saw love meeting love when instead of just seeing a mundane pickup at school, I saw grass like emeralds and birds singing symphonies, and I didn't know what was happening. I had no idea what was happening. And so I didn't know if that was gonna stay like this forever, if I'd ever be, like, able to function normally, because all I could do was cry. Everything was so beautiful. And hold it back and put see the dogs playing and things that just I couldn't fathom what was happening. And interestingly enough, I picked up A Course in Miracles where I left off, because when I finished the lessons and didn't get it, I went back into the text and found myself at the page that I stopped. I picked it up, and it was the forgiven world.
Mm.
Ever seen anything so lovely? And it was describing what it was that I was in the middle of, because I forgave myself after I forgave everyone else that I thought were the problems in my life. So from that point on, I never, I thought when I first told my husband when he came back, we went out to lunch and I was trying to describe what happened. And I said, something happened. And I tried to describe it and he said, that's cute. And I said, I don't know what this is, but I know it's not cute. And so I thought, well, that's okay. I can just live this. I can just live this because I don't have to talk about it. ever. I can just be what this is. And it became very evident to him soon and that I wasn't going back to my old self. You couldn't, I was just like in bliss all the time. And then without me ever, hanging a shingle or doing anything, people started coming, word of mouth spread. I went to my first Course in Miracles meeting thinking, I'm going to pull these people off the ceiling. I want to find out what happened to me. And it was a few people and they were talking about pain. And I was like, don't you see? Like to myself, I could say, don't you see? That's not real. And I realized I could see through pain. So what happened then, people started coming in succession, like just people finding me and finding me in their life's worst challenges and pain. The interesting thing is in the beginning, I was more observing than doing anything and listening and getting guided about what to do. But it was as if I had this genius assistant because I had been used to going on auditions, and this was in the area around Boston. And people started calling me, and I didn't have an office. I didn't do it. So I'd say, well, I'll come to your house. Where are you? Because I was used to going anywhere for auditions. And when they'd ask me, they'd come in clusters. Like I would find big pain that I would before have ever wanted to be around or looked at because I was doing the bite and smile on purpose. I was like a person, if I'd get the symptoms if someone told me about their disease. Like I was very empathetic, but I didn't know how to separate myself enough to be objective. And so when these people started coming, they came in clusters. Like there would be brain, it would be specific too, like brain cancer. And I would see through. I would see the thing that they were all saying that was similar. I would be able to see through it and help them move to a place where they could have a miraculous perspective. Then there'd be, big things like incest, and it would be clusters of people. And not only that, I would be sent to one person, and then there would be like, I wouldn't know where the next person was. I just looked at a map, and it would be a couple blocks away in the whole area outside Boston, a couple blocks away with an organic restaurant in between. And then the next day, it would be a completely other area with people with the same things, but with a very convenient situation for me to get to. So I knew I wasn't doing it. I knew I was being sent. And then it just never stopped. All these years now, 28 or 29 years later.
Yeah, working on 30 years.
Yeah, working on 30 years. I've been helping people in their life's greatest transitions and challenges and pain. And, every time they're laughing in our first encounter. They're laughing because that's the difference between the miraculous world and our traditional way of methodically plodding through problems and pain to get to a hopefully someday other side of
Mhm.
this. So that's basically the background story of why and how I've been doing the things I've been doing for as long as I have.
Well, I think when I was listening to you, there were so many things that you really touched on that I kind of want to emphasize, but I want to start with this. And what you're just and it's making
Yeah.
me emotional. When you talk about the time, the I can't did you say several days or several weeks that you went in this place of bliss?
In the place of bliss, it was
Yeah.
3 days, very
Yeah.
interesting 3 days of complete, like, my mind couldn't work to do anything but appreciate, and then, little by little, and I realized that when I engaged my mind, that would bring it down, so then now it's just a background hum, it isn't as dramatic for me because I'm so used to that world that that's where I
Mhm.
live, and it's more of a background hum.
Well, the reason why I wanted to bring this up is because of our human evolution that we're in right now at this very moment.
Perfect, perfect.
And what you're describing, what you were experiencing in those 3 days is what my guides have shown me that that's what we're moving in to be able to stay in. That
Outstanding, outstanding, and I have to say, I now know because, people don't realize they are many spiritually oriented people have a goal of becoming enlightened. And they don't realize, that saying, chop wood, carry water, pre-enlightenment, post-enlightenment, chop wood, carry water. Well, I was still shoveling my driveway in snowstorms. I was still taking the kids to the places, but that 3 days of seeing the world as real, the
Yeah.
way that it truly is, seeing people cross each other with those shopping carts in Kmart's parking lot and saying, "Stop, you missed it. You orchestrated this just so you could smile at that
Yeah.
person. We're missing our own best lives, and they're happening all day, every day."
Yeah. Well, you're describing what my guides have described as the fifth dimension.
Oh, that's
And
perfect.
so the reason why I'm really focusing on this right now is because I have had so many people say to me, "Well, how do we live? We can't live without our mind. How do we stay in this
Yeah,
place,
you
bliss,
can.
and be able to function?" So I want
I live there now, and I've been living there for the last 28 years, I mean, I never left it. It's never, ever left me, and that's the hard part, 'cause, to kind of a real I'm a humble person, truly, and to say I'm enlightened sounds so, like, egotistical and arrogant, but my it's like a light goes off in the attic, and you drop a backpack full of rocks. Your burdens are lighter. It's truly the world of light,
it is so
and
much easier to live.
yeah.
It is so much easier, and
Oh my
that's
gosh.
yeah,
So
and
much
I
easier.
think that that's what, people's problem is. You said a couple other things. First of all, you talked about hiding the book,
Yeah, I hid
and
it.
not
Yeah.
exposing what you were looking into.
Especially
Okay.
because I could feel how deep it was going to the deepest recesses of my heart every day,
Yeah.
I met my husband was a German military brat
Um,
and very tactical and structural,
Structured.
and I
Yeah.
was still able to function in that world. By the way, another good quality of this is that you can function in the world way
Yeah.
better than you could before.
Yeah. So I just want to I want to share with people about that hiding, and I did it. I did it for probably 28 years. I had two groups of friends. I had my spiritual friends, and then I had the everyday world, and I lived a double life. And living this life that we're moving into and hiding yourself is also denying or stifling the energy of who you are. It's like putting that big cloak over yourself and not being true to your own identity. Do you think?
Well, I think your guides are telling you to ask me the perfect question, because even after, being someone who has helped people for these last 28 years, I've only mostly done one-on-one from people who came to me word of mouth, because it was easier for me, to just they are all on board because they're in their life's greatest pain. And if I can get them out like this, they're on board. And people will always just say, "Go to Maureen. We don't even know what just go to Maureen." And so they're already kind of bought in even before we begin. But so I do believe that was your guides telling me, like, I'm being told, get out bigger with this, because it's not any longer. 26 years ago, it was a lot different than
Yeah.
now.
Yeah. 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 And we're at this time right now to where there's probably a lot of people that are hiding.
Yeah.
And what I think where we are now is that our voice needs to start being heard so that it can allow others to stand in their spiritual strength.
Right, and
Yeah.
and, also because I'm a very grounded person, after subsequently I got my master's in divinity at Harvard. I'm a very grounded person. That was really hard, though. I only did it to see if I could keep my no mind and do something as intellectual.
Yeah.
It was walking a razor's edge at times, because, I'm in a classroom with PhD students who are talking about. I remember I got into one class, Mother Mary and the Divine Goddesses, and they were starting to talk like PhD students, analyzing, and I'm like, "No, these are my people. Yeah, I can't do this." I had to leave. I had to drop the class because it would be too much, here,
Yeah.
when it's all, you abide here
Yeah.
now.
Yeah. Yeah,
And I give it up for nothing. I would give it up for nothing. There's
yeah.
nothing I would give it up for.
Yeah. Well, I just want to keep, I just want to keep reiterating that the more that people like you and I can do just exactly what you did, stand in this heart energy and stand in this knowing, but also learning. And because I had to do this too, and I'm still doing it, learning how to stand more in our spiritual truth, but
Mhm.
being able to function in an everyday 3D world. And I think
Yeah.
that this is where those of us that are a little bit further down the path, I call, my guides always call us the first wave. We're the
Mm.
first wavers.
Yeah.
And we're the ones that are learning to navigate exactly what you're describing, is being able to stay in our oneness, our wholeness, and our completeness, but being able to function in that everyday 3D world and create the balance.
And show that that's possible. And again, it's kind of interesting now that you say all this, Lisa, too, about what your guides are saying. It's very interesting because I was almost compelled to do normal things. Like I said, like go get a master's at Harvard because I really had to see, is it possible to stay here? And again, having it be my number one priority and commitment in life to see what else I could do. And in the beginning, I will say, in the very beginning, I couldn't. I was in Screen Actors Guild, and they used to every year have Screen Actors Guild awards. And so we would get all the screeners for free from all the movies, and I couldn't watch some of the movies anymore,
Yeah.
because I could feel the difference. It was like a battery drain.
Yeah.
I could feel if they had that theme of the illusion being too thick, I couldn't do that.
Yeah.
I think now, after years of I've worked in maximum security prisons, I've worked in hospitals that people, kids are dying. And the thing is that I know there is no such thing as death. I know that this is an ever expanding evolution of consciousness and love and infinite love. And that's all we are truly in the midst of. So I can do that as a person helping in counseling. But the sensationalism and the disconnect of things like Hollywood films that glorify things are a little bit too much. I think people might want to know that that's something to kind of be capable of discerning.
Yeah. Well, and I think that, what I've experienced and people that I've talked to is that our bodies are vibrating at such a high frequency now. We're in this higher frequency that lower, denser energy just isn't meshing anymore. And
Mm,
we just find ourselves stepping away from,
yeah,
I can't, like, promoting, oh my gosh, I can't even think of the words. But what I'm seeing is that, like in movies where there's so much control
and yeah,
and abuse and
mhm, and
that
violence
heavy,
and
yeah, and yeah, all of and movies are getting worse. It's like the more gory they are and the more sex is shown,
yeah,
it's like Hollywood is going to one extreme that way, but we as the human race is moving back
in
away
another.
to wanting softer, more loving, more gentle, kind.
And I'm happy that we're talking about this because those are the kinds of things that a lot of people don't have the awareness to have the conversation about. And these are the things that I feel that we are the biggest help and guides in that we kind of have been there, done that to the stage. I'm how many, like we said, 29 years into this now. And I've lived all the way through from my kids being babies to through now as adult children. I know all of the phases of what is affected by consciousness, unconsciousness,
Yeah,
and been also able to be privy to so many people's intimately privy to so many people's lives who are at their crossroads and greatest challenges and see how we are all the same, that no one's being done to,
yeah,
everyone's being done for to awaken us to this
yeah,
beautiful self.
absolutely. And again, that's another concept that's really hard for us. And again, it's the way that it's always described to me is that we're deprogramming.
Yeah.
And that we were put in this position through thousands of years of becoming the victim instead of recognizing that whatever the situation is,
You're
there's
the
something
victor.
more to it.
And always, that's another message that I'd love to get across to your audience, that the greatest pain that people can experience, and again, I've seen all of the gamut of pain and been intimately in there to watch how that means you're bigger than it. And that's the hardest thing to get someone to see, that this is only happening for you specifically because you're bigger than it. So if someone has a loved one that they were so adoring and had such a wonderful relationship who passes, guess what? It's your time to recognize that that's not the end. I've had my dad come back in the physical. My dad came back in the physical as I was talking to a client. I often walk while I talk to clients, otherwise I'd be sitting all day. And so I was in the big park here walking and talking to a client of mine whose stepfather had just passed, and he was like her dad. He brought her up. And she was telling me how she was worried for her mom and things. And so we were talking, and I said to her, even masters like Buddha and Jesus can come back in the physical. I said that, and I look up there's a hill in this park. I look up the hill and I see this guy coming towards me that has the same walk, shuffle, kind of like my dad. Looks like my dad. And she knew my dad had just passed a couple of years before that. And I see him coming, and I'm thinking he's coming down the hill closer. He's going to get less and less looking like my dad. Instead, he's looking more and more and more like my dad. And when he got about here, every hair on my body stood up, and I got this, and I see him, and it's my dad. He crossed right there, like arm's length next to me. And I stopped talking because I said something just happened, and I stopped talking, and she said, "What?" And I got it. I said, "My dad just walked past me." And she said, "Oh my God." Now, this woman was a healthy skeptic. She came to me because her family told her to come to me because she had had breast cancer. And so she said, "Oh my God, do you want to run after him?" And I said, "Why didn't I think of that to myself?" And I turned around, I saw him turning a corner like towards my house. And I said, "No, I don't. I knew that I wasn't supposed to run after him." Interestingly enough, this woman, her name was Karen, passed away suddenly that week of a stroke, not from the breast cancer, from a stroke, an unexpected stroke. And the interesting thing is that my dad was like, "I'll show you Jesus and Buddha. I'm coming walking down here." But
Mm,
he did that for her, you
yeah.
know what? And then guess what? About a year and a half later, I get a message from her sister-in-law. You got to call her mother because she showed up twice to her mom. Her mother was so afraid to tell people, getting back to the afraid thing, that she only told her neighbor across the street who had Alzheimer's, because then maybe she'd forget if she was afraid they'd take her away. She wrote in her book K with the date and time. And she came to her in the middle of the night. She was said, I sleep on a recliner lots of times because I can't sleep at night. And I woke up and all the lights were on, and the dog, Karen's dog she inherited when she passed, was standing at the bottom of the recliner looking. And she said Karen was standing there all glowing and radiant, like the being I saw in the mirror. Perfection, we're all perfection. And then she said, "How did you get in? I locked the doors." And then she said, "I realized what I said." And so, like, the story continued, it was just beautiful to see. So that story is one of the ones that's the biggest problem and pain and misnomer, is that there is death.
Yeah.
There's no death here.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay, so one other thing that I want to touch on that I thought was important is self-forgiveness.
Ah,
Because this is another thing that, what my guides tell us is that, we're moving into this place of learning to love ourselves, and that we in order to be able to transition into this new way of being, self-love is almost mandatory.
absolutely
And
mandatory.
yeah,
Yeah.
Okay, so will you
Okay, so the reason why forgiveness is so important, and as A Course in Miracles teaches forgiveness, it's not the same forgiveness that people talk about when they're like, oh, I'm such a good person, I'm the better person, I'm going to forgive you. It's much more akin to an awakening because what you realize is it never happened the way you thought. For instance, had I been awake during all those experiences that were aware like I am now, the way I can see through the pain of things, I never would have made the choices that I made out of fear or out of desperation or out of thinking I'm not good enough or out of lack. All the ways that we address pain is typically from a very, very low amount of consciousness or self awareness or self esteem. And so this through that life revision that I had, the thing that I saw is you're divine. You're one with God. You're the ray of the sun. The sun stays in the heavens, but you're the ray that's touching the earth. This is hilarious. It's hilarious. It was a rolling, thunderous chuckle that you thought you weren't God. You think you're not God. That's impossible. That's an impossible dream. You're dreaming a dream of separation. This is a dream that we're in, folks. Compared to reality, this is a wisp of nothing. Even though it seems so tangible and so real and so material, that's how genius we are. We are so genius that we can create a dream that's so convincing that we forgot that we were the authors of the dream and the directors and the producers and the award-winning actors in the dream. So when we forgive from this perspective, we're actually forgiving a dream of separation that makes us small and limited. And then if we can't abide by forgiving the other person, it means that we have ourselves beholden to a small identity that's made of lack and fear. Like if I'm right rather than happy, at least I'm right. That's ego feed. That's what egos love because the ego is very clear. Make this very easy. We have our true self and we have our ego self, the voice of separation. It's just the voice of separation. All it wants to do is constantly keep itself safe by keeping itself alive, by keeping you believing you're separate from your divinity. Because once you know you're divine, you can't be unloving, you can't be
Mhm.
un unhappy, you can't be you're at one with everything.
You can't be the undo the un.
One.
Yeah, well, and the reason why I want you to talk about this is because there's so many people that beat themselves up. Okay, so we're brought up in a society that is guilt ridden. The old saying of how mothers make you feel guilty for not doing more. All that following their wishes and desires. Okay, so I'm not good enough because somebody said I wasn't.
Yeah.
We get beat up by society, and I'm not pretty enough, or I'm not smart enough, so I shrink down into nothingness. And I may have said something that hurt somebody's feeling, or I did something that created an uncomfortable outcome, and somebody else is judging me on all of these things. So then we start beating ourselves up. And there's so many people out there right now that don't understand that they can let go of all of that.
Yeah. So in the world of the divine, the only reality is unconditional love, unconditioned. Says the only you're allowed to have. But in this world, we're conditioned into believing we're all kinds of things, like the victim or the one who's, the smart, pretty one, or we have conditions on ourselves that make us happy or unhappy. In the world of reality, or capital R, truth and reality, or the heaven of it, there's no condition to this that's not lovable, which is very hard for humans to believe. So when there's something that comes along and you can't love it, then you're going to get stuck in the illusion of it or the dream of it. And that often makes people feel guilty. So there's two things that separate us and that are very, very useful to egos, that separate us from our divine nature. And it's two sides of the same coin: judgment and guilt. If you're in judgment, you cannot hold the same space as love. If you're in guilt, you can't hold the same space as love. So think about how many of us are conditioned into guilt or conditioned into believing that we have to judge something to be right rather than happy. And we spend so much time and space and energy in those places, realizing that this is more of a hell than a heaven at one point, hopefully.
Yeah.
But otherwise, we don't get to feel like we're worthy enough for heaven,
Right.
even though we're in it all day, every day.
All day, every day.
And you know
Yeah.
what? No one else can ever make you worthy of heaven because it's taking the veil off your own
Yeah.
eyes.
Yeah.
So it's between you and you,
Yeah.
and always will be.
Yeah. Well, and that's I think that that's so important because it is between me and me.
Mhm.
And the outside world doesn't decide who I am. I have to
Right.
decide who I am. Is that
Right.
right?
Right. And so with this is such a great conversation in that I'm so happy. I love that we're empowering other people to step out and be themselves, because otherwise, how can you forgive yourself if you've never lived your own real life?
Yeah.
And then you're in a constant, hamster wheel of needing to forgive yourself because you're not being who you came here to be.
Yeah.
And the other part of that, before the life revision, I actually saw myself and my husband, because I thought I had to forgive him for so many things. He was always, because our most intimate relationships are the ones where we kind of see the mirror to ourselves, like,
Right.
without knowing that that's what they are. And I remember seeing us above it all before the dream of coming here and saying, "You pretend you're awake, you're asleep, and I'll be awake. And I'll pretend I'm asleep and you be awake." So we were giving, so like after that, I was like, this guy, even if he thinks I'm frightening being this bliss person all the time, I don't care what he thinks because I know he's the same as me. We orchestrated this, and so I can't see him as anything other than an equal. And and then it's everyone here. We all orchestrate these challenging circumstances to step up, to
Yeah.
be our true. Like, I could never forgive that unless I was Mother Teresa. Of course, that's like an example of a saint, but you are all that, and we are all
Yeah.
that.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely,
Mhm.
absolutely. So, this is so funny because I have 15 questions and I've only asked one because
I'm
this topic is so important to me
Yeah.
because it's, we're already moving into the fifth dimension. People have already, obviously you've already stepped in it and standing in it and have been for a while. But, one of the other things talking about you and your husband is that I get these comments all the time about, well, if I move into this fifth dimension, what
Mhm.
happens to those that are left behind? What happens to those?
Very interesting. Again, if you're following the voice for the divine, or what A Course in Miracles calls the voice for God, or I call the voice of the divine that's in us. And you can always feel it, because this is an important thing to help people with too. What happens is you shift from being horizontally oriented, past, present, future, like what's going to happen in my future. I got to not do that again. That happened in my past. And you become vertical. That's the only way I can put it. When people say, "Oh, the power of now," or now and things, the only way I can put it is it's much more between you and you. The divine you, which is illumined because you have the capacity to step up above it, to see a bigger picture, all at once, everything. And you have a capacity to go way deeper to what you really truly feel, or what is your heart's desire. And this middle territory is not as important. Even though you use it to get, I still can find my keys, I can still do things, I can still write books, even I can do things that are pretty requiring a linear mind. But the default is always to the feeling of alignment with all that is. It's a much bigger, and when you're in alignment with all that is, you're not going to know every tiny detail. You don't want to until you get there. I remember early on when I first woke up, and with the Course in Miracles meetings that I went to see what happened to me, and I wound up facilitating them because everybody's like, "Oh, what is this?" And I remember after one of the meetings, someone came up to me and said, I believe that all these spaceships are going to come and they're going to take us and things. And I had never heard anything like that before. And I just said to him, I don't know anything about that, but you know what? I know that if that happens, I'll be able to be present enough to do it. So whatever. And I knew that I don't need to be micromanaging or going into anything in the future as much as I needed to know that I'll always be present here, because I know that if I've been in many situations ever since these almost 30 years now, and whenever I show up and if there's something chaotic or tragedy kind of happening, I know I'm there to help.
Yeah.
I know it's not because it's I know I was placed as someone to be able to help. I don't default to fear. I default to, okay, what's happening? What's happening now?
Mhm. Yeah.
And then just following with no mind,
Mhm.
same way a woman can pick up a car off her child, is because that no mind got in, the one who is all powerful and amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, what I'm hearing you say is that we need to be more focused on ourselves
Mhm. The
and
self of
do
us it feels the deeper self, I'll say, just because it feels you can feel it, it feels more free because it doesn't micromanage your life the way your pseudo self does.
yeah. Well, and then not being fearful for what other people are experiencing.
Right.
And that's what the key is that I wanted
Oh, you mean
people to
and
hear.
as far as the counseling stuff, because again, I go into
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
pretty crazy
Well,
tragic circumstances willingly.
yeah.
Nothing I remember I had my dog at the window and the alarm on and everything. I was a
Yeah.
fearful person before this happened. And then I'm like, wow, one of the best days of my life was going to maximum security prison. And it's because I've never seen any place on this earth that hell is real.
Right, and there we go. There we go, and that's hard for a lot of people to understand,
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
the our perceptions and the way that we see things.
Right.
Okay, so I have we're running out of time, and I have so
Oh,
many more questions to ask. So let's move
we're gonna
into what
do
a
this
miracle
again.
is.
Oh,
So,
pardon me?
yeah, let's move into what a miracle is.
Okay.
What is your definition of a miracle?
It's a shift in perception, and at first when I heard that, I said, "Ugh, that's like so lackluster, a shift in perception." I can turn positive if I'm not feeling positive, but it's not that. It's the shift that allows for you to see that heaven I described, even in the midst of life's greatest challenges or pain. How I often do that with people who come to me who don't know me, I'm a perfect stranger to them, and then I walk in, is we immediately talk about first the human condition. Because most people, like I've had teens that have noose around their neck the night before, ready to commit suicide. And when I come to them, again, with no fear, because I'm not afraid of either, they can't go anywhere ultimately. I know that there is no such thing as us. We can leave a physicality just the same way we came in with our first breath and we leave with our last. But what's the breath? It's invisible. It animates us all day, every day. It supports and supplies us. That's our spirit. They're our inspiration. And so the first thing I do is show them the human condition, the limited idea that we have of ourselves, and then point to the reality of what's really happening. And from there, we can step back and get that wider lens on things so that it's not that painful personal story. The painful personal story is the always I'm not. And if we step back to see what I am, the I am of everyone, then they can start to and it's not this in describing it here, it's not the same as when I'm talking to someone. It's very tangible and visceral for them. Because the other thing that happens is if I walk away from someone after I work with them, I know they're not alone. I just opened the door that they had closed shut for them to now have the divine show up all week after I'm speaking with them, because the divine I'm just the mouth and the hands and the eyes. We're just the vessels here that are speaking for them, and when you do, they go with whoever it is. Like, that's such a relief. You can feel it. It's such a relief because I'm not responsible for the person who is in a great deal of pain. I can be there whenever they need a physical person saying something, but the divine has their back. The divine has everyone's back all day, every day, always. There's nowhere that the divine isn't. And they
Mhm.
love us impeccably beyond what humans can comprehend in any way, shape, or form. And and so when you know that with a capital K, then and you know there's nowhere to go that love isn't, that the divine isn't, it changes the whole story. So that shift is a shift in perception from living in this limited and separate world. I'm here, you're there, to a world that's truly one. And the one that it is unconditional love. Love. The love that everybody wishes that they could feel all day, every day is actually what our divine self is.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Um, so what do you notice is the biggest misunderstanding about the awakening or awakening process?
I'd say that the biggest thing is that there's a divine out there and that they're attaining something. Like, I didn't realize that I was walking myself back into myself and unlayering things. You might have heard the analogy of like peeling an onion, that, and it's really a great analogy because of the tears that people typically have as they're unlayering this identity. That if I don't have this identity, I'm left with nothing, a big void. Like at the core of me must be nothing but a vacuous void, is what the ego says to us. And instead, you go through phases where, of course, there feels like sad and hard and challenging to forgive people or to do the things you do that you unlayer with. And I call those the tears that kind of clear your vision. And then when someone gets to the place ultimately that they start to see reality, and it's so beautiful, like that I almost couldn't keep off my knees those days, I call those the golden tears. That we're in that place where, we're so full that we're so full that we're overflowing with that appreciation and gratitude, and the eyes being the windows to the deeper soul allow for us to then be in that space. So you go from crying those tears of pain to crying tears of absolute joy and bliss. Really, the biggest thing though that they mistake is that they're getting somewhere and going somewhere rather than realizing who they are already. That
Right.
they already are that perfection
Yeah.
now.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So your work is basically turning pain into purpose.
True, and I also believe, so I'm in a place now where when you talked before about, I have done one-on-one work with people for so long now that I see a bigger purpose at hand, and I do believe it's in the field of mental health. I was a teaching fellow at Harvard as well, and I taught a class, rethinking mental health, spirituality, healing, and culture. And I really believe that the rethinking is the same shift that I'm talking about with, we're not a body, we're spirit. And so when someone is rethinking mental health, I believe now that we have to raise the bar exponentially on the field of mental health. People aren't afraid to talk about it as much, especially young people, because of all the social media and things, that people aren't as um, close to themselves about their feeling angst or problems or pain. I think there's a much faster way and immediate way to transcend pain than walk people slowly through their traumas.
Yeah.
And so I believe I'm moving into a place where it'll be much more about miracles and mental health.
Well, good. I'm glad to hear you say that. But for a couple of different reasons. And first of all, when I started this journey back in 1996, for me, that's what happened for me. It started with through massage therapy, and through massage therapy, I was taught that the very first day one, Swedish massage, you can't help others if you can't help yourself.
Mm.
You have to heal yourself before you heal others.
Mhm.
And so this has been
So important because otherwise I think that's why because I don't I am completely healed as we're talking about, so I can bring someone right to completely healed. I don't need to
Mhm.
walk them through phases because I know we can be completely healed, and that happened to me
Yeah,
overnight. I
yeah,
was unconscious one day and I'm conscious the next. I didn't
yeah,
know what that meant or how to
yeah,
incorporate it yet into my
yeah,
life, but I was awake.
yeah,
And when you know that is a possibility, and I know I'm not special. I know I'm just a person who's like anyone else. And in the beginning I said, why wasn't I Mozart or, an amazing writer or somebody who was like this extraordinary genius person that you could have handed this to? And I know it was because I'm normal.
yeah.
Because I'm so normal that everyone else can aspire to the same thing because we all deserve this now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that is the reason why I have this podcast is because I wanted people to be able to see that they can heal their wounds, they can heal their pain, they can heal their
Mhm.
grief. And there are tools and techniques and ways to do that that can be more instantaneous
Yeah,
than years and years and years of talking about it.
right. And I
And
also think that the world of spirituality even and self-help now is kind of, mesmerized with the trauma world,
yeah,
and, I believe we're ready to outgrow that now. I
yeah,
really do, and
I do too.
I'm glad because otherwise, I I don't understand why on this planet we still have the experience of war, for instance, and it's so ridiculous that that should exist anywhere on a planet with any people that are awake. And anyone who's awake can see how bizarre it is that we still default to thinking that challenges are necessary and that pain and problems are necessary
Yeah,
when they're not.
yeah,
So the I love this evolution to be from maybe a little bit of unsettlement or even a great deal of unsettlement to absolute joy and bliss. And then you can feel the difference between that, the contrast between that. And then there's hell and heaven. Pretty easy to choose between. You don't have to keep going in the middle ground all the time.
yeah, yeah. Well, okay. So, how do you suggest people do this?
Okay. So, in my world, I help people realize, first of all, that enlightenment is an effortless endeavor at best because you're actually, like we were just talking about, it's so much easier. You relax. It's a great exhale. It's like the exhale where you relax into who you truly are already. So it's not this endeavor where you're working hard or being austere, aesthetic to try to do things in a way that get you somewhere. It's a great, like, relax. The one who relaxes the most wins. And in life, if we can get that across in a way that's practical and pragmatic enough to let people kind of grab the bone to chew on it long enough, that's the things that I do with people one on one. But now I've been creating more courses and things like that. So I created it for my past clients because there were so many extraordinary people that I just become friends with once they wake up because, I'm just like making my friends, I'm waking my friends. And so I knew that there were so many people that were already this like-minded, beautiful, aware people having come through great challenges and that they were living embodiments of this, that I wanted them to meet each other. And so I made a collective called the Miracle Meeting Place. And also, even when people come out the other side and come out the other side of a great challenge, sometimes you need a tune up. The world can be kind of mesmerizing and can be something the mundane can suck people in. And if they're not paying really close attention, they sometimes need a hit of the miraculous. So the Miracle Meeting Place is basically a collective where people come where we expect miracles, so miracles happen. And and the more people that are in anticipation and expect miracles, the more they happen, and the more that we can be candid and not hide, and the more that it's normal. So that if I'm hoping that we hold the space and the energy enough to be able to just keep spreading so that it's a normal and just, this massive wave of people expecting miracles every day, all day. Because if we expect them, they show up.
Yeah.
They
Yeah.
they show up. You know this. The minute that you just shift that orientation where you're saying, "Okay, I'm willing." And A Course in Miracles says all you need is a little willingness, just a little willingness. It's not like you have to be this great adept saint to be worthy of miracles. It's just show up a little willing, and the miracles are already there. They actually are already there. We just miss them. Just like that day when I was seeing them, where people were missing them everywhere. And I realized, oh my gosh, we only have to wake up. That's all you have to
Yeah.
do.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, the world is a miraculous place.
It is.
And it really is just being able to, um, that's what I'm hearing is unshutter. Unshutter the
Unshatter.
mind. Take off the shutters of
And
the
and open
mind.
the eyes, open the heart. If
Yeah.
we open, just become more open and receptive, then that the next step to being completely receptive is appreciation. Like, you just fall into appreciation because you're seeing that. The other thing to recognize that I really think is an important thing to help people right now as they're listening have a more liberated perspective, it's never done. This is eternity we're talking about. We're dreaming a dream, a small little dream of separation in the scheme of eternity, and there's always going to be an iteration. So whenever it feels like this is the end, it's finite, or I can't do this, or I'm done, realize that that's just a doorway to a new beginning, that we're evolving this place, and it's an iteration of consciousness. We're all becoming more conscious day by day. I
Mhm.
also really believe that every generation that comes in is slightly more evolved than the ones before, so that we've got some really great beings coming up
Yeah.
now that
Yeah.
we're ready to give up the control to. Like, come on, people, give up control and relax and enjoy
Yeah.
this new blood that's coming in to
Yeah.
evolve this place.
Absolutely. I agree 100%. Absolutely. It's amazing to watch. And
Yeah.
again, I think you and I are a little bit older, so
Yeah.
we've seen, like, our generation, our kids' generation, and then their kids'
Mhm.
generation, and you start seeing how everything is evolving in these beautiful little light workers that,
Yeah,
are
and I'm
here.
I'm fortunate enough, I live near, like, Harvard and MIT, so all I have to do is get on the tram, the subway, and see them having conversations with another, or sit in a coffee shop where their minds, they have solutions already to every problem that we could ever think up.
Yeah.
They have, biological ways to eat microplastics. They have that already. It's just getting the reins to them to be
Yep.
able
Yep.
to move into the healing of this
Yeah.
place. And it's
Yeah.
so fun. I'll say the other thing that I think is important for us to kind of embody and illustrate is how fun it is to be on the healing side of things.
Yeah.
Like, it's super fun. Every day you wake up like, "Yay, what's next?"
Yeah.
It's super fun to be part
Yeah.
of the consciousness of this planet.
Absolutely, it is,
It
and
really is.
it's a great honor, and the understanding of understanding how big you are
Yeah.
as this little dot, in the whole scheme of things, but each one of us is huge.
Each one of us is huge, is huge enough to encompass all of it with
Yeah,
consciousness and love. All
yeah,
of it, all
yeah,
of it. Each and every
absolutely.
one of us.
Yeah,
It's amazing. So,
yeah.
yeah, we're blessed, that's for sure.
Well, the last question that I have, I think you may have already answered, but I'm gonna give you another opportunity. For those that are listening that wanna experience a miracle right now, what would you tell them?
So get yourself into a place where you're allowing and open to miracles. Let yourself be in a space that's conducive to the something more, to this expansive, eternal nature that you are, and that you are abiding within at the same time. And let yourself just relax into it. I actually am going to give everybody a gift, and it's I did this deliberately to get people a taste, a tangible taste right away. It's a meditation for miracles. So it gets them into that miraculous open mindset. So I think you'll leave a link or something to that, but that'll give them access to things that'll help them to start to see this as normal. That's
Yeah.
the main thing that I want
Yeah.
people to
Yeah, and
know.
absolutely, is that understanding that we're moving into the new norm,
Yeah. We're
and
moving.
that yeah, we're on the front edge of it, but this what you're talking about and who you are is who we are becoming.
I can't be more thrilled to hear that because it's fun. Like, not only is it fun, but in the beginning, you kind of are looking for your people.
Yeah,
And the other part of this is that I traveled to India, I traveled to China, I traveled to all these sacred spaces. It was a thing of mine to just travel to sacred spaces all over the world to feel the energy now that I could feel things and be aware in the midst of sacred spaces. And so I have a lot of friends who are aware, but that live all over the world in different places.
yeah,
And so to have collectives that can actually gather in a place is exceptional. Like that's a treat for all of us. If
yeah,
we could and to be able to be like-minded where you can finish someone's sentence and it doesn't seem odd or strange, 20 years of being the odd one
yeah,
is a long time. Especially in the
yeah,
beginning, I opened my mouth and people would just drop their jaw and be like, "What is she saying? What is she
yeah,
saying?"
yeah,
I know it's real because I knew they could feel it was real at the deeper part of themselves, but they
yeah.
didn't know what I was saying.
Absolutely. I feel you, sister. So we
Very
understand.
fun.
Yeah. So, okay, so tell me what services that you offer and how do people connect with you?
Okay. I have a wait list for one-on-one, because there's only so much of me, and as I said, I need more time. I'm writing a book, and I'm doing things to get this more out in a wider scope for, I guess we're part of like that is the part of the first way why we're compelled now to do more for greater amounts of people. So I have the Miracle Meeting Place. That is right now it's on a wait list. We're going to open it up because we just did a whole bunch of new things. We put a search engine inside. There's like 200 hours of things that I've done with people that are already in the archives. There's a beautiful curated place that I call the library that has like beautiful things from all holy people and saints and sages and things from all over the world that are videos and audios and writings from them. It's like the members lounge, and then it's just beautiful. And so we're putting a search engine in there because there's just so much content, and then we're also making a community in there as well. So that's on a wait list right now till the beginning of next year. But if they go to that the really wonderful divine hit of A Miracle Now. It's meditation for the number 4miracles.com. Very easy, meditation number 4miracles.com. They'll get in there and they can listen to that, get a big taste of themselves being in that miraculous space. And then if they'll also be able to get on the wait list for Miracle Meeting Place. And
Nice.
then, if anybody does want to get a hold of me, it's maureenwhitehouse.com.
All right.
So
Okay. So for you guys that are listening and would like to get a hold of Maureen, I am going to include, I'll have the link that you just mentioned for the meditation and then also how to contact you. And it will be in the video description, this video description, and you'll scroll down to the bottom of the description and you'll see Maureen's information there. So Maureen, what a pleasure.
it
Thank
really
you.
is fun, Lisa.
Thank you for being
We
you.
do
And
this
thank
again
you for
sometime so that we don't like because I know us, we probably could go for like 5 or 6 hours.
yeah, yeah, this is
But
hard to keep it to this hour for sure.
it is, but I'm hoping what everybody gets from this is, "Look at us. We're having fun. We're normal-ish." And this is the next wave. It can't be anything but great. I'm excited for
Absolutely,
it.
absolutely. So again, Maureen, thank you for being here, and for
Thank
you guys
you.
that are watching, thank you for watching, and I'll see you next week.
Okay. Bye, everybody.